Welcome to the Forgotten Narrator. Alright, let's dive into one of the most unsettling mysteries of the Warhammer 40,000 universe. The idea that there might be regions within the warp itself that even the mighty Chaos Gods dare not tread. It sounds impossible, right? After all, the warp is their playground, their domain, a place where reality bends and fractures under their whims. It's a dimension defined by madness, pure chaos, and the raw essence of the darkest emotions in the galaxy. Yet even within this storm of raw psychic energy, there are whispers of shadows so profound, so utterly alien, that even the dark lords of chaos keep their distance. Imagine it, a realm within the warp where even the twisted, ever-changing landscape grows still, where the whispers of demons fall silent and the very air crackles with a presence older and perhaps even more malevolent than the dark gods themselves. Some say these are regions of absolute entropy, voids in the sea of madness where the currents of emotion and thought fail to flow, where even the most vicious daemons become mute, their forms unraveling into silence and stillness. Others believe these places are the remnants of something ancient, a force or being that predates the very birth of the Chaos Gods themselves. Perhaps a relic of a forgotten era, or even the final echoes of a dead pantheon that once held sway over the warp. Of course, this is all speculation, myth, and terrifying rumor, but in a galaxy where reality itself bends to the collective fears and hatreds of countless billions, sometimes myths hold more truth than we'd like to admit. After all, the Imperium has long known that even the Chaos Gods have their limits, their fears, and their forbidden places. They are not all-seeing, nor all-powerful, despite the terror they inspire. So why would the very masters of the warp avoid these places? What could possibly linger in these shadowed, forgotten corridors of unreality that even beings of pure chaos dare not confront? When you start digging into the origins of these terrifying legends, you quickly realize that they are deeply buried beneath layers of fear, myth, and half-forgotten whispers. These dark regions, places that even the Chaos Gods themselves might fear, are not a recent invention. Their existence is hinted at in some of the oldest records of the Imperium, hidden within the dusty vaults of the Librarius, where only the most secretive and daring scholars dare to tread. These accounts are rare, often fragmented, and laced with the desperate fear of those who first stumbled upon them: explorers, rogue psychers, and even entire lost fleets. Some of the earliest mentions of these places come from the lost records of the Great Crusade, when the Emperor's forces first began to push into the unknown corners of the galaxy. As the newly forged Legiones Astartes and their human auxiliaries cut a bloody path through the stars, they occasionally stumbled upon systems that seemed to vanish into the void, their signals abruptly silenced, their worlds stripped of all life. The first to notice this pattern were the early rogue traders, those fearless and often reckless souls who dared to push beyond the Emperor's light in search of new riches and forgotten glories. Their journals, when they returned at all, spoke of ghostly whispers in the warp, of strange and twisted echoes that seemed to reach out for their souls, pulling at their sanity like claws of black glass. Yet it wasn't just the human explorers who noticed this. Even the ancient Xenos races, those long extinct or diminished species whose ruins still litter the galaxy, left hints of these dark places. Eldar runes carved into forgotten, overgrown monoliths speak of places where the light of Isha cannot shine, where even the predatory instincts of Cain find no purchase. The Necrons, with their cold, logic-driven minds, recorded entire sectors as forbidden, marking them with the glyphs of death and silence. And even the Orcs, who rarely fear anything that bleeds, have legends of whole wogs, vanishing without a trace when they strayed too far into the wrong parts of the Immaterium. Some whisper that these regions are the final remnants of an ancient war, perhaps even predating the birth of the Chaos Gods themselves, the echoes of a battle so terrible that it left permanent scars upon the very fabric of the warp. Others suggest that these places might be the remnants of failed attempts to control the warp, ancient psychic experiments gone horribly wrong, or even the discarded husks of forgotten gods, long since consumed by their own madness. But why, then, do even the Chaos Gods avoid these places? What could possibly be so horrifying that even beings born of madness and suffering would fear to set foot there? It's a chilling thought, one that has led more than a few rogue scholars to abandon their research, driven mad by the very questions they sought to answer. And perhaps that's the most terrifying thing of all. The realization that there are places in the galaxy so dark, so twisted, that even the very beings who thrive on chaos dare not enter them. The nature of these dark regions within the warp is perhaps one of the most unsettling mysteries in the galaxy. For those who have dared to speculate, the first thing that stands out is how fundamentally different these places are from the rest of the immaterium. Normally, the warp is a seething, ever-changing storm of raw emotion and psychic energy, a place where reality itself is a fluid concept, bending and warping in response to the darkest thoughts and fears of the countless billions whose souls it touches. It is a realm of nightmares made real, where logic has no place and the laws of physics are little more than a distant memory. Yet, these dark zones seem to defy even that twisted logic, existing as strange voids within the chaos, places where the normal rules of the warp simply cease to function. Imagine a region of the warp where the howling currents of madness fall still, where the swirling tides of raw emotion seem to freeze in place, becoming as cold and silent as the airless void between the stars. Some describe it as a kind of psychic vacuum, a place where even the most potent emotions are drained away, leaving only a hollow, aching emptiness. Others speak of regions where time itself seems to fracture, splintering into 1,000 jagged shards that twist and fold in upon themselves, trapping unwary travelers in endless loops of despair or hurling them forward through ages of darkness in the blink of an eye. There are even whispered tales of places where the very fabric of reality becomes thin, where the walls of the materium and the immaterium begin to break down, allowing strange and forgotten forces to seep through into the physical world. And then there is the silence. In the rest of the warp, sound is a constant companion. The distant screams of tortured souls, the manic laughter of demons, the endless churning roar of psychic storms. But in these dark regions, even that terrible symphony falls silent. It is said that even the most monstrous entities of the warp dare not speak in these places, their voices choked off by some unseen, incomprehensible force. It is a silence that drives mortals mad, a suffocating, mind-crushing emptiness that strips away the very will to live. Some theories suggest that these regions are wounds in the fabric of the warp itself, scars left by some ancient cataclysm that shattered the very essence of the immaterium. Others whisper that these are the tombs of dead gods, long-forgotten entities whose final screams still echo through the void, distorting the very nature of reality around them. There are even those who claim that these places are prisons, sealed off from the rest of the warp by powers unknown, perhaps even by the long-dead creators of the old ones themselves, to contain horrors too terrible to imagine. What is perhaps most disturbing is that these regions seem to reject the very concept of chaos itself. In a universe defined by constant change and ceaseless conflict, these dark zones stand as a stark, horrifying reminder that even the gods of madness and despair have their limits, their boundaries, their fears. And if the chaos gods themselves avoid these places, what does that say about the true nature of the horrors that might lie within? It's a chilling thought, one that has driven more than a few scholars to madness as they ponder the implications. Because if there are places within the warp that even the gods themselves fear to tread, then what kind of nightmare might be lurking in the darkness, waiting for the day when the final seals are broken and the galaxy is plunged into a darkness from which it might never return? The pursuit of forbidden knowledge has always been a dangerous path in the grim darkness of the far future, but few undertakings are as perilous as attempting to explore the dark regions of the warp. Yet, despite the countless warnings, the whispered legends, and the unending streams of madness that flow from these places, some have tried, and a very few, have even returned to share their horrifying discoveries. One of the most infamous of these explorers was the rogue psyker known only as Valtoris the Broken. He was a once brilliant seer, a man whose mind burned with the raw fire of psychic potential. Yet, like so many who gaze too deeply into the abyss, he was driven to madness by his own ambition. It is said that Valtoris sought to pierce the very heart of these forbidden zones, to reach the places where even daemons fear to tread, hoping to uncover the ultimate secrets of the warp itself. What he found, or what he claimed to have found, would haunt his shattered mind for the rest of his tortured existence. When he finally emerged from the warp, his ship a twisted wreck of broken metal and flickering lights, Valtorus was no longer the man he had once been. His eyes, once sharp and filled with a terrible cunning, had become dark, bottomless pits, as if the shadows of the places he had visited had etched themselves into his very soul. He spoke in whispers, his words a twisted, broken jumble of half-remembered horrors and cryptic warnings. He claimed to have seen cities of pure entropy, places where the very concept of time had collapsed in upon itself, trapping the souls of those who ventured too close in eternal loops of madness and despair. He spoke of whispering shadows that moved without form, of silent, screaming figures frozen in endless torment, and of a darkness so profound that it seemed to devour not just light, but the very fabric of reality itself. Others have tried to follow in his footsteps, with similarly disastrous results. The explorator fleet of the Mechanicus, known as the Sixth Triarch, attempted to chart one such dark region, their massive, cathedral-like ships vanishing without a trace into the shifting, ever-hungry tides of the immaterium. When a single, battered scout ship stumbled back into real space decades later, its crew had been reduced to a gibbering, fleshless horde, their eyes hollow, their bodies twisted into grotesque parodies of human form by the psychic storms they had barely escaped. Their ship's logs were nothing but static and screams, fragments of corrupted data files that seemed to pulse and writhe with a malevolent life of their own. Even the mighty Space Marines have not been immune to the lure of these forbidden places. The records of the Librarius mention a strike force of the Black Templars, hardened warriors who have stared down the worst horrors the galaxy can offer without flinching, vanishing without a trace after pursuing a renegade warband into one of these regions. Not a single Vox transmission, not a single distress beacon, not even the psychic echoes of their dying screams ever returned from that mission, as if the very memory of their existence had been wiped from the galaxy itself. And of course, there are the countless nameless souls who have been lost to these places, the forgotten, the damned, the desperate fools who thought they could master the darkness, only to become part of it. Rogue traders, twisted cultists, lost navigators, and even the rare inquisitor driven to madness by their own insatiable curiosity, their stories are scattered across the hidden archives of the Imperium, written in the blood of those who dared to dream too deeply. It is a sobering thought, the realization that, even in a galaxy where entire worlds can burn in an instant and star systems can be consumed by the rage of the warp, there are still places so dark, so utterly alien, that even the most fearless, the most fanatical, and the most desperate of souls have failed to return from them. The history of the galaxy is littered with the ghosts of lost fleets and forgotten legions, entire armadas and battle-hardened warriors swallowed whole by the endless shifting tides of the warp. Yet, even among these countless tragedies, there are certain tales that stand out, stories of ships and armies that vanished not just into the chaotic storms of the immaterium, but into something far darker, the very regions we've been talking about, those forbidden, shadowed corners of the warp that even the Chaos Gods fear to enter. Perhaps the most infamous of these lost fleets is the Ghost Flotilla of the 8th Expeditionary Fleet. This was a mighty armada, one of the Emperor's chosen strike forces during the Great Crusade, tasked with bringing the light of imperial truth to the darkest corners of the galaxy. Yet, at some point during the long years of that bloody campaign, this fleet simply ceased to exist. No distress signals, no last, desperate Vox transmissions, just a sudden, eerie silence. Some say they ventured too close to one of these dark regions of the warp, perhaps lured in by whispers of forgotten relics or ancient secrets, and were consumed by whatever nightmares lurk within. There are fragments of evidence, hints in long-forgotten data logs and corrupted sensor readings that suggest they may have encountered something far worse than mere demons. One surviving scrap of code, recovered from a centuries-old astropathic relay, speaks of a darkness that seemed to move with purpose, a void that drank the very essence of the souls it touched. It spoke of ships twisted and broken, their hulls shattered by forces that defied even the madness of the warp, their crews left as little more than empty husks, their souls stripped away in an instant. And then there are the whispers of the so-called Shadow Legions. Entire companies of Space Marines and Imperial Army regiments that vanished without a trace after pursuing their enemies into the heart of these regions. The Blood Angels, known for their relentless pursuit of the enemy and their unbreakable will, are said to have lost an entire company in this way. The Salamanders, too, have records of lost warriors, their green-clad brothers simply disappearing into the darkness, their final battle cries forever silenced. Even the Iron Warriors, those cold, calculating masters of siege warfare, are said to have lost a significant portion of their strength during the Horus Heresy to one of these dark zones. According to the fragmented records of the traitor legions, a full battalion of these iron-skinned warriors vanished while pursuing their hated Imperial Fist enemies into the depths of the warp. To this day, their fate remains a mystery, their names etched into the blackened walls of the Eye of Terror as a bitter reminder of the price of hubris. And it's not just the warriors of the Imperium who have fallen prey to these places. Even the Eldar, with their ancient knowledge of the warp and their unmatched psychic powers, have lost entire fleets to these dark regions. The Corsairs, those wild and reckless pirate lords of the Eldar, speak in hushed tones of ships that strayed too close to the shadows and never returned, their wraithbone hulls shattering into splinters, their spirits forever lost to the howling void. Even the Orcs, those brutal, fearless killers who laugh in the face of death, have tales of entire wogs vanishing without a trace. Some whisper that the great warlord Ghazghkull Thraka himself narrowly avoided being consumed by one of these places during his early years, his fleet pulled back from the edge of destruction only by the mad, instinctive cunning that has made him one of the most feared warlords in the galaxy. What is it about these regions that can claim entire fleets, that can silence the mightiest warriors and consume the souls of the fearless? Perhaps it is the ultimate expression of the warp's madness, a darkness so profound that even the most savage, the most unbreakable, and the most relentless warriors of the galaxy cannot hope to survive it. Or perhaps it is something else entirely, something older, something colder, something that hungers not just for the flesh and blood of its victims, but for their very souls. It is a chilling thought, one that lingers in the minds of those who dare to listen to the whispers of the warp, a reminder that even in a galaxy defined by war and chaos, there are still places where even the bravest souls fear to tread. Demons are the very essence of the warp, beings born from the raw, chaotic emotions of the mortal races. They are creatures of pure madness and unbound will, shaped by the fears, desires, and hatreds of the galaxy's countless souls. To them, the warp is both a home and a hunting ground, a place where they reign supreme, their forms and thoughts twisting and changing with every pulse of psychic energy. It is a place where logic breaks down, where time and space are mere suggestions, and where the impossible becomes reality. So, what could possibly make such creatures afraid? What kind of place could force even the most terrifying of demons to recoil in fear, to flee into the darkest corners of their own twisted realm? Some whisper that these regions are anathema to the very essence of demonic life, that they are places where the raw psychic energy that sustains and defines these creatures simply ceases to exist. In these dark zones, the very fabric of the warp seems to rebel against the presence of demons, draining them of their power, unraveling their twisted forms, and scattering their essence into the void. It is a place where the very concept of chaos itself seems to break down, where the endless cycle of birth, death, and rebirth that defines the life of a demon grinds to a terrifying, silent halt. There are stories of lesser demons, the lesser spawn of Khorne, Tzeentch, Nurgle, and Slaanesh, that have stumbled into these places by accident, drawn in by the echoes of distant battles or the promise of fresh souls to torment. What they found instead was a silence so profound that it seemed to crush the very life from their twisted, burning hearts. Their howls of rage and terror, normally powerful enough to shatter the minds of mortal men, fell flat and empty in the cold, dead air of these shadowed places. Their bodies, once strong and mighty, began to twist and crumble, their flesh turning to ash, their souls unraveling into thin spectral threads that faded into the darkness without a trace. Even the greater demons, those mighty champions of the Chaos Gods, are said to fear these places. There are whispered tales of bloodthirsters who have charged into these regions with their axes raised high, only to stumble and fall as their strength drained away, their once mighty wings folding in upon themselves as their bodies turned to brittle, crumbling stone. There are stories of lords of change, those cunning, scheming creatures of Tzeentch, who have looked into the dark heart of these places and seen only their own death, their precognitive minds shattered by the cold, uncaring void that lies within. Some even claim that the mightiest of all demons, the demon princes, fear these regions above all others. These fallen champions of chaos, once mortal, but now transformed into beings of pure, unending hatred and power, are said to avoid these places at all costs, their pride and arrogance crumbling in the face of an emptiness that even they cannot comprehend. For if the whispers are true, if these dark zones truly are the final resting places of forgotten gods, then even a daemon prince, a being that has defied death itself and risen to godlike power, is nothing more than a fragile, temporary thing in the face of such ancient, unknowable forces. And of course, there are the even stranger stories, the whispered rumors of creatures that even demons fear, beings that dwell within these dark places, feeding on the raw, psychic energy of the warp, devouring the very essence of the creatures that dare to stray too close. Some say these are the remnants of forgotten gods, beings so old and so powerful that even the chaos gods themselves have no memory of their existence. Others whisper that these creatures are something else entirely, something beyond even the understanding of the dark gods, entities that were never born of the warp, that have no place in the endless, ever-changing cycle of chaos, and that hunger for the souls of those who dare to trespass into their forgotten realms. It's a terrifying thought, the idea that even the most monstrous, the most fearsome beings in the galaxy have their limits, their fears, their nightmares, that even the mighty bloodthirsters of Khorne, the twisted champions of Tzeentch, the rotting, plague-ridden servants of Nurgle, and the beautiful, deadly creations of Slaanesh have places they dare not tread. Places where their power means nothing, where their rage, their cunning, their corruption, and their seduction fall silent in the face of something far older, far darker, and far more terrifying than anything they have ever known. Theories about the true nature and origin of these dark regions within the warp are as varied as the fan communities that speculate about them. After all, when you're dealing with a place where reality itself twists and shatters, where time has no meaning, and where even the mightiest of the chaos gods dare not tread, it's only natural that fans would come up with some truly wild ideas. Some of these theories are based on the fragments of lore scattered throughout the countless tomes of Warhammer 40k, while others are pure speculation, the kind of wild, late-night theories shared by die-hard fans over a flickering screen, deep in the heart of an online forum or whispered across a gaming table. One of the most popular theories is that these regions are the remnants of some ancient, long-forgotten war, a conflict that tore through the warp long before the birth of the Chaos Gods themselves. According to this idea, these dark places are the psychic scars left behind by a battle so catastrophic, so devastating, that it permanently scarred the very fabric of reality. Some fans even suggest that this war might have been the final stand of the Old Ones, those mysterious, godlike beings who once ruled the galaxy before their downfall at the hands of the Necrons and their Khitan overlords. Perhaps these dark regions are the shattered remains of their final strongholds, places where their psychic screams still echo through the depths of the warp, forever marking the sites of their last, desperate battles. Others take a different approach, suggesting that these dark zones are actually the tombs of forgotten gods, beings that once held sway over the warp, but were consumed by their own madness or cast down by the rise of the current Chaos Pantheon. These fans point to the eerie silence that seems to hang over these places, the strange, unnatural stillness that even demons fear, as evidence that these regions are the final resting places of beings so ancient, so powerful, that their very deaths shattered the reality around them. It's a chilling thought, The idea that even the mighty chaos gods themselves might one day fall. Their broken, forgotten corpses, drifting through the endless darkness of the warp, their once mighty voices reduced to nothing more than distant whispers on the edge of hearing. Then there are those who believe that these regions are not remnants of the past, but glimpses of the future. Places where the warp has already begun to decay, to crumble into nothingness as the last embers of life flicker and die in the galaxy. According to this theory, these dark zones are the first signs of the end times, the final, inevitable collapse of reality itself, as the last sparks of mortal life are snuffed out and the warp collapses in upon itself, leaving only cold, empty darkness in its wake. It's a bleak, terrifying vision of the future, one that suggests that even the immortal chaos gods are ultimately doomed, their final screams lost in the silent void as the last echoes of their madness fade into the darkness. Of course, not all theories are quite so grim. Some fans take a more optimistic view, suggesting that these regions are actually the final remnants of some lost, hidden order within the warp. Places where the raw chaos and madness of the immaterium have been tamed, shaped, and contained by an ancient, forgotten force. Perhaps these dark zones are the last bastions of some long-dead pantheon, places where the raw, formless energy of the warp has been locked away, contained within psychic walls, strong enough to withstand even the endless tide of madness and corruption that defines the immaterium. It's a comforting thought, the idea that even in the darkest corners of the galaxy, there might still be places of order and peace, untouched by the madness of the warp and the corruption of the chaos gods. And then, of course, there are the really wild theories, the ones that suggest that these regions are actually the home of some entirely new force, something that has never been seen before, something older and stranger than the chaos gods themselves. Some fans whisper that these places are the domain of the true masters of the warp, beings so ancient and powerful that even the mighty ruinous powers dare not challenge them. Others suggest that these regions are actually alive, that the very fabric of reality within these places has developed a mind of its own, a cold, unfeeling intelligence that feeds on the souls of those who stray too close. Whatever the truth, it's clear that these dark regions hold a special place in the hearts and minds of Warhammer 40k fans. They are the ultimate mystery, the final, unknowable horror lurking at the heart of the immaterium, a reminder that even in a galaxy defined by endless war and unending madness, there are still places where even the most powerful beings in existence fear to tread. And perhaps that, more than anything else, is what makes them so fascinating. The idea that even in a universe as dark and brutal as Warhammer 40k, there are still places where the darkness runs deeper than even the gods themselves can comprehend. The influence of these dark regions on the material universe is one of the most terrifying aspects of their existence. It's one thing for these places to twist and corrupt the already nightmarish reality of the warp, but the idea that their unnatural presence can bleed into real space is a chilling thought. It raises the question, what happens when a ship, a fleet, or even an entire planet strays too close to one of these forbidden zones? What horrors might be unleashed when the boundaries between the physical and the immaterial begin to break down? There are countless stories of ships that have vanished without a trace after entering the warp, their crews swallowed whole by the madness and chaos of the immaterium. But when it comes to these dark regions, the tales are even more unsettling. Some speak of ships that have re-emerged after decades or even centuries of silence, their hulls twisted and shattered, their crews long dead or worse. There are whispers of vessels that have drifted back into real space, their hulls covered in strange, unidentifiable growths, their corridors filled with a cold, unnatural mist, their bridge controls fused into grotesque, organic shapes as if the very metal had been twisted and reshaped by some unseen, malevolent force. Others tell of ships that seem to have been frozen in time, their chronometers spinning wildly, their engines fused into twisted, useless masses of metal, their crews frozen in place as if caught in a single, eternal moment of terror. There are reports of ships that have returned from these places with their gellar fields shattered, their void shields reduced to flickering, half-dead whispers, their power cores cracked and bleeding energy like open wounds. And then there are the even stranger tales, the whispered rumors of ships that seem to have become something else entirely. Their hulls fused with twisted organic matter, their crews' bodies warped into horrific, unrecognizable forms, their minds shattered into 1,000 screaming fragments. Some believe that these dark regions have a kind of gravity, a psychic pull that draws in anything that strays too close, dragging it down into the depths of the warp like a drowning man being pulled beneath the waves. It's as if these places are hungry, forever reaching out with unseen tendrils of darkness, seeking to feed on the raw psychic energy of those who dare to trespass into their domain. Others suggest that these regions might actually be alive in some twisted, incomprehensible sense, that the darkness within them is not just a passive void, but an active, predatory force, constantly reaching out into the material universe in search of fresh souls to consume. And then there are the truly horrifying stories, the ones that speak of entire planets that have drifted too close to these dark regions, their populations reduced to little more than mindless, shambling husks, their cities twisted into grotesque, nightmarish parodies of their former selves. There are whispers of worlds where the very air seems to pulse and writhe with unseen, malevolent energy, where the laws of physics break down and the very ground itself seems to breathe, its surface shifting and flexing like the flesh of some ancient, slumbering beast. Even the mighty Imperial Navy, with its colossal warships and its iron-willed commanders, has suffered at the hands of these dark places. There are records of entire battle fleets that have been torn apart, their ships shattered and scattered like leaves in a storm, their crews driven mad by the whispering voices that echo through the hulls of their ships, their minds shattered by the impossible, ever-changing horrors that stalk the shadows of their passage. Some of these fleets have never returned at all, their final fate lost to the madness of the warp, their names forever erased from the annals of the Imperium. And yet, despite all of this, despite the countless warnings, the shattered ships, the twisted hulls, and the broken minds, there are always those who are willing to push their luck, to gamble their lives and their souls for the chance to uncover the secrets of these forbidden regions. Perhaps it is the lure of the unknown, the thrill of the chase, the desperate need to prove oneself against the ultimate darkness. Or perhaps it is simply the madness of the warp itself, whispering in their ears, pulling them ever deeper into the shadows, promising them glory, power, and knowledge beyond their wildest dreams, even as it prepares to consume them whole. In the end, perhaps that is the greatest horror of all. The realization that, even in a galaxy defined by war, death, and endless suffering, there are still places where the darkness runs deeper, where the shadows are darker, and where even the mightiest ships, the strongest warriors, and the bravest souls can be broken, shattered, and lost forever. There are few tales more haunting, more unsettling, than those of the brave, or perhaps simply desperate souls who have attempted to explore these dark regions of the warp. It takes a special kind of madness to willingly plunge into the heart of a place that even the chaos gods themselves avoid, a place where the very fabric of reality twists and fractures, where time and space break down into a chaotic swirl of nightmare and despair. Yet for those who seek the forbidden, for those who hunger for the ultimate secrets of the galaxy, the lure of these regions can be too much to resist. Take, for example, the ill-fated expedition of rogue trader Luthar Varrock. Known for his recklessness and his insatiable thirst for discovery, Varrock made a name for himself as one of the few men willing to sail into the darkest corners of the galaxy. His ship, the Iron Promise, a battered but formidable warship that had seen more than its share of battle. Varrock and his crew set out to explore one of these dark regions, driven by rumors of ancient Xenos technology and whispered tales of unimaginable power. For months, their ship drifted deeper into the darkness, their astropaths whispering of whispering shapes that clung to the edges of their psychic vision, of strange, incomprehensible signals that seemed to pulse from the very heart of the warp itself. When the Iron Promise finally returned to real space, it was little more than a twisted, blackened hulk, its once proud hull shattered and scorched, its corridors filled with the twisted, half-melted remains of its crew. The few survivors, those broken, shattered souls who somehow managed to crawl back from the abyss, spoke in hushed, terrified voices of things they had seen. Things that should not exist. Things that defied the very laws of physics and logic. They whispered of shadows that moved without form, of echoes that seemed to claw at the edges of their minds, of a darkness that reached out to them with grasping, unseen hands, dragging their very souls into the abyss. And then there are the tales of the Astartes, those mighty warriors of the Emperor who have been known to brave even the darkest corners of the galaxy in their endless war against the forces of chaos. The Black Templars, perhaps the most fanatical of all the Space Marine chapters, are said to have lost an entire strike force to one of these regions, their ship simply vanishing into the darkness without a trace. Some whisper that their souls still wander the dark corridors of their shattered ship, their battle cries echoing endlessly through the empty, haunted corridors, their once proud bodies reduced to little more than dust and echoes. Even the Inquisition, those fearless hunters of heretics and traitors, have not been immune to the lure of these forbidden places. There are records of entire Ordo Malleus strike teams that have vanished into the darkness, their names erased from the records of the Imperium, their fates lost to the madness of the warp. Some whisper that their minds were shattered by the things they saw, their very souls consumed by the darkness. Their once mighty wills reduced to little more than the shattered fragments of broken dreams. And of course, there are the nameless, faceless masses of the Imperial Guard. Those brave, doomed soldiers who have been thrown into the meat grinder of the galaxy's endless wars, their lives spent like water in the service of the Emperor's endless crusade. Some of these men and women have found themselves drawn into the darkness, their ships dragged off course by the strange, gravitational pull of these dark regions, their souls lost to the shadows without a trace. Their names, their lives, their very existence erased from the annals of the Imperium, their final screams forever lost to the void. Yet despite all of this, despite the countless warnings, the shattered ships, the twisted hulls, and the broken minds, there are always those who are willing to push their luck, to gamble their lives and their souls for the chance to uncover the secrets of these forbidden regions. Perhaps it is the lure of the unknown, the thrill of the chase, the desperate need to prove oneself against the ultimate darkness, or perhaps it is simply the madness of the warp itself, whispering in their ears, pulling them ever deeper into the shadows, promising them glory, power, and knowledge beyond their wildest dreams, even as it prepares to consume them whole. In the end, perhaps that is the greatest horror of all. The realization that, even in a galaxy defined by war, death, and endless suffering, there are still places where the darkness runs deeper, where the shadows are darker, and where even the mightiest ships, the strongest warriors, and the bravest souls can be broken, shattered, and lost forever. The true nature of these dark regions within the warp is perhaps the greatest mystery in the entire Warhammer 40k universe. For all the fear they inspire, for all the ships they have swallowed, the souls they have devoured, and the minds they have shattered, no one truly knows what lies at the heart of these shadowed places. And perhaps that is the greatest horror of all. The idea that there are some secrets so dark, so ancient, and so utterly alien that they might never be uncovered, their true nature forever hidden behind the shifting, ever-changing veil of the warp. Some fans believe that these dark regions are the final remnants of a time before the birth of the Chaos Gods, a time when the galaxy was ruled by beings far older and far more powerful than even the most ancient of the ruinous powers. According to this theory, these dark places are the shattered tombs of forgotten gods, beings who once held dominion over the Immaterium, their broken bodies still drifting through the void, their final, dying screams echoing endlessly through the darkest corners of the warp. It's a chilling thought, the idea that even the mighty chaos gods themselves might one day fall. Their once great empires reduced to little more than dust and echoes, their twisted creations left to wander the empty corridors of their shattered realms. Others take a different approach, suggesting that these dark regions are not the remnants of some forgotten past, but the first signs of a terrifying future, the final, inevitable collapse of the warp itself. According to this theory, these regions are the first cracks in the foundation of reality, the first hints of the end times, when the last embers of life flicker and die, and the galaxy itself crumbles into nothingness. Perhaps these places are the first hints of a coming darkness, a shadow that will one day consume not just the physical universe, but the immaterium itself, dragging everything into a final eternal void where even the chaos gods themselves will be forgotten. Then there are the really wild theories, the ones that suggest that these regions are not the tombs of forgotten gods or the echoes of some ancient cataclysm, but the birthplace of a new kind of life, beings born not of flesh and bone, but of pure, raw entropy, creatures that feed on the very fabric of reality itself, devouring the souls of those who stray too close, growing stronger with every soul they consume. These fans argue that the darkness within these places is not just a passive void, but a living, hungry thing, a being of pure, unending hunger that waits in the shadows, biding its time, preparing to consume the galaxy itself. And then there are the even stranger theories, the ones that suggest that these regions are not even part of the warp at all, but something else entirely. Places where the very nature of reality has begun to break down, where the laws of physics and the fabric of space-time have become twisted and corrupted beyond recognition. Perhaps these regions are the first hints of some new, unknown dimension, a place where the rules of our universe simply do not apply, where the very fabric of reality has begun to unravel, where time and space break down into a chaotic swirl of madness and despair. Of course, there are also those who believe that these regions are simply the ultimate expression of the warp's madness. Places where the collective fears, hatreds, and nightmares of the galaxy have become so concentrated, so intense, that they have taken on a life of their own, forming dark, twisted echoes of the emotions that created them. According to this theory, these regions are not the remnants of some forgotten past or the hints of some terrifying future, but the ultimate expression of the warp's madness, a place where the fears of countless billions have been given form and substance, where the very walls of reality are stained with the psychic blood of 1 trillion souls. And then there is the final, perhaps most terrifying theory of all, the idea that these regions are not the remains of some forgotten war, not the tombs of dead gods, not the birthplaces of some new, unknown life, but something even more unsettling, the final, inevitable destination of all life, the place where all souls, all memories, all echoes of existence are ultimately drawn, consumed by the darkness, their final screams, lost to the void, their once bright souls reduced to little more than shadows, forever drifting through the endless, empty corridors of the warp. In the end, perhaps the true nature of these dark regions will never be known, their secrets forever hidden behind the shifting, ever-changing veil of the immaterium, their true nature lost to the madness and chaos of the warp. And perhaps that is for the best. For if the whispers are true, if these places truly are the final resting places of forgotten gods, the first hints of a coming darkness, or the birthplaces of some new, unending hunger, then perhaps it is better that they remain forever hidden, their secrets forever lost to the shadows, their true nature never revealed. The existence of these dark regions within the warp presents a terrifying potential threat to every faction in the galaxy, not just the Imperium. For as much as these places are shrouded in mystery, it is clear that their influence reaches far beyond the twisted, ever-changing tides of the immaterium itself. The mere presence of these regions creates a ripple effect that can distort reality, warp the minds of those who stray too close, and twist the very fabric of the materium itself. And in a galaxy already on the brink of chaos, where entire star systems can burn in a single night, and empires can rise and fall in the blink of an eye, the thought of such a force is deeply unsettling. For the Imperium, the threat is perhaps the most immediate and the most terrifying. The Adeptus Mechanicus, those tireless seekers of forbidden knowledge and lost technology, have long suspected that these dark regions are responsible for the strange, unexplainable phenomena that occasionally plague their fleets. There are countless stories of ships that have drifted too close to these regions, their machine spirits driven to madness, their logic engines twisted into snarls of impossible equations, their crew reduced to babbling, gibbering wrecks, their minds shattered by the things they have seen. And if the theories are true, if these regions are not just random pockets of darkness, but the first signs of a coming collapse, then the Imperium itself could be at risk. Its mighty fleets reduced to little more than drifting, shattered wrecks. Its once proud armies reduced to little more than mindless, shambling husks, their minds consumed by the darkness. For the Eldari, the threat is perhaps even more personal. These ancient psychic warriors have long had a special relationship with the warp, their very souls bound to its twisted, ever-changing tides. But if these dark regions truly are the remnants of some forgotten, long-dead pantheon, then the Eldari might find themselves facing a new kind of threat, a force older and more powerful than even their ancient gods, a darkness that could consume their very souls, reducing them to little more than shadows, forever drifting through the endless corridors of the Immaterium. And for a race already on the brink of extinction, struggling to hold on to the last fragile remnants of their once great empire, the thought of such a threat is enough to drive even the most hardened Farseer to despair. Even the Necrons, those cold, calculating masters of death and destruction, might find themselves at risk. These ancient machines have long relied on their mastery of the physical world to dominate their enemies, their cold, metallic minds immune to the temptations of the warp. But if these dark regions truly are the remnants of some forgotten war, the final resting places of ancient godlike beings whose powers defy even the understanding of the Necrons, then even the mighty, immortal legions of the Necron-Tyre might find themselves facing a force they cannot hope to defeat. And for a race that prides itself on its cold, unfeeling logic, the thought of an enemy that cannot be reasoned with, that cannot be controlled, that feeds on the very essence of their ancient souls, is a truly terrifying thought. And then, of course, there are the Orcs, those brutal, fearless warriors who have long thrived on the chaos and madness of the galaxy. For a race that knows no fear, that lives for the thrill of battle and the roar of the Wag, the idea that there might be something in the galaxy that even they should fear is a truly unsettling thought. And yet, there are countless stories of entire Orc warbands that have vanished without a trace after straying too close to these dark regions. Their once mighty Wag, silenced in an instant, their crude, ramshackle warships reduced to little more than drifting, shattered wrecks, their once roaring war cries reduced to little more than whispers on the edge of hearing. Even the Tyranids, those mindless, ever-hungry devourers of worlds, might find themselves at risk. For as much as these creatures thrive on chaos and destruction, their minds bound together by the will of the all-consuming hive mind, the thought of an enemy that can twist and corrupt their very essence, that can reduce their mighty, bioengineered bodies to little more than twisted, lifeless husks, is a truly terrifying thought. And for a force that relies on its sheer, unstoppable numbers to overwhelm its enemies, the thought of an enemy that can consume entire swarms in an instant, that can twist and warp their very genetic code, is enough to give even the most cold-blooded hive tyrant pause. In the end, the potential threat of these dark regions is perhaps the greatest horror of all. The realization that, even in a galaxy defined by war, death, and endless suffering, there are still forces that even the mightiest armies, the strongest warriors, and the bravest souls cannot hope to defeat. Forces that defy understanding, that twist and warp the very fabric of reality itself, that reduce the proudest empires to little more than dust and echoes, their final screams lost to the void, their once bright souls reduced to little more than shadows, forever drifting through the endless, empty corridors of the Immaterium. As we reach the end of this journey into the darkest corners of the warp, it's hard not to feel a sense of unease, a creeping, nagging fear that perhaps some things are better left unknown. We've explored the twisted, nightmare landscapes of these forbidden regions, glimpsed the shattered remains of lost fleets and forgotten legions, and whispered the names of dead gods and forgotten horrors. We've stared into the abyss, and for a moment, perhaps, it stared back. But what have we truly learned? Are we any closer to understanding the true nature of these places, or have we simply driven ourselves a little closer to the edge of madness? Our minds forever scarred by the things we have seen, the whispers we have heard, the shadows we have glimpsed, moving just out of the corner of our vision. Perhaps that is the greatest horror of all. The realization that, even in a galaxy defined by war, death, and endless suffering, there are still places where the darkness runs deeper, where the shadows are darker, and where even the mightiest ships, the strongest warriors, and the bravest souls can be broken, shattered, and lost forever. Places where the rules of reality itself break down, where time and space twist and fracture into 1,000 jagged shards, where the very walls of the universe seem to close in around you, crushing the breath from your lungs, draining the life from your body, consuming your very soul. And yet, despite all of this, despite the shattered ships, the twisted hulls, the broken minds, and the lost souls, there are still those who are willing to push their luck, to gamble their lives and their sanity for the chance to uncover the secrets of these forbidden regions. Perhaps it is the lure of the unknown, the thrill of the chase, the desperate need to prove oneself against the ultimate darkness. Or perhaps it is simply the madness of the warp itself, whispering in their ears, pulling them ever deeper into the shadows, promising them glory, power, and knowledge beyond their wildest dreams, even as it prepares to consume them whole. In the end, perhaps that is the true nature of these dark regions, not just places of darkness and shadow, but mirrors, reflections of our own fears, our own madness, our own desperate, endless need to understand the universe around us, to push ever further into the darkness, to find the edges of reality and stare into the abyss, no matter the cost. And perhaps that is the true horror of these places, not the twisted, broken ships, the shattered hulls, the broken minds, or the lost souls, but the realization that, even in a galaxy as dark and brutal as Warhammer 40k, there are still places where the darkness runs deeper, the shadows are darker, and the whispers are louder than ever before. While the existence of these dark regions remains a terrifying enigma, their potential impact on the future of the galaxy is perhaps even more unsettling. For all their mystery, for all the shattered ships and broken minds they have claimed, these places might also hold the key to the galaxy's ultimate fate. If these regions truly are the remnants of some forgotten war, the final resting places of dead gods, or the birthplaces of a new kind of life, then the choices made by those who dare to explore them could shape the fate of entire civilizations, perhaps even the galaxy itself. Imagine, for a moment, that one of these dark regions is discovered to be the final resting place of a long-dead god, its shattered remains still radiating raw, undiluted power, its final, dying screams still echoing through the corridors of the warp. What might happen if one of the Chaos Gods were to discover this, to reach out with their twisted, grasping hands and claim that power for themselves, to draw the final breaths of a dead god into their own twisted, broken form, to rise up from the shadows stronger than ever before, their madness given new life by the whispers of a forgotten past? Or imagine that one of these regions is the birthplace of a new kind of life, a race of beings born not of flesh and blood, but of pure, raw entropy, creatures that feed on the very fabric of reality itself, devouring the souls of those who stray too close, growing stronger with every soul they consume. What might happen if these creatures were to escape from their dark, forgotten prisons, to spread out into the galaxy, consuming entire worlds, entire star systems, entire empires in their endless, unending hunger, reducing the proudest civilizations to little more than dust and echoes, their final screams lost to the void, their once bright souls reduced to little more than shadows, forever drifting through the endless corridors of the immaterium. And then there is the final, perhaps most terrifying possibility of all, the idea that these dark regions are not the remnants of some forgotten past, not the birthplaces of some new kind of life, but the final, inevitable destination of all life, the place where all souls, all memories, all echoes of existence are ultimately drawn, consumed by the darkness, their final screams lost to the void, their once bright souls reduced to little more than shadows, forever drifting through the endless, empty corridors of the warp. In the end, perhaps that is the greatest horror of all, the realization that even in a galaxy defined by war, death, and endless suffering, there are still places where the darkness runs deeper, the shadows are darker, and the whispers are louder than ever before. And perhaps in the end, that is the true nature of these dark regions. Not just places of darkness and shadow, but mirrors, reflections of our own fears, our own madness, our own desperate, endless need to understand the universe around us, to push ever further into the darkness, to find the edges of reality and stare into the abyss, no matter the cost. Would you like me to polish this section further, or perhaps add a few more to expand the overall script? Just let me know your preferred direction, and I'll adjust accordingly. So, if you've enjoyed this journey into the darkness, if you found yourself drawn to the shadows, if you feel that same, desperate, unending need to stare into the abyss, then make sure to hit that subscribe button to join us on this endless journey into the unknown. To stand with us as we push ever further into the darkness, to uncover the secrets of the universe, and to face the things that even the gods themselves fear to confront. Because in the end, perhaps that is the only true way to understand the galaxy, to stare into the darkness, to listen to the whispers, and to embrace the madness of the warp, no matter the cost.